Hello, my name is Caitlin Thompson, and I wanted to bring light to some disturbing facts about child abuse in our home state of Texas. The purpose of this presentation is to inform those of you who are either not familiar with the topic of child abuse or not aware of its prevalence in Texas specifically. I'll start by showing some general facts about child abuse in Texas that has occurred over the past 4 fiscal years. This table from the U.S. Census Bureau and referenced in my main research article, Fiscal Year 2022 Child Maltreatment Fatalities and Near Fatalities Annual Report, published by the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. An alarming takeaway is that Texas has a higher child fatality rate per 100,000 than the national average and 1.4 times the national rate during the year 2020. The good news is that the number of investigated child fatalities is on the rise, and the abuse or neglect confirmed cases is slowly decreasing as well after a sharp rise between 2018 through 2020. This change in the number of abuse or neglect cases could be attributed to a change in the Texas Family Code, where abuse or neglect requires the person's blatant disregard for the consequence of the act or failure to act that results in harm to the child or that creates an immediate danger to the child's physical health or safety. This chart from the Texas DPFS report shows where the determination is by the state after an investigated child fatality. As you can see, of the child fatalities investigated over the past decade, roughly 20% result in a reason to believe abuse or neglect was occurring, and the fatality was confirmed to be a result of the abuse or neglect. Another important statistic that may often be overlooked in the cases where there's a reason to believe abuse or neglect was occurring, but the fatality was not confirmed to be a result of that abuse or neglect. The issue here is that the perpetrator of abuse can be charged with child abuse, but they cannot be charged in the death of the child. Child fatality is an unfortunate reality that can occur regardless of abuse. Working toward increasing the number of cases investigated child fatalities and increasing the ruled out percentage will show that steps are being taken in the right direction to regards to child abuse in Texas. Perpetrator to victim relationships are an important factor in abuse and neglect cases, as most abuse and neglect cases are by someone the victim knows and trusts. According to the Texas DFPS report, parents are the most common perpetrators. What is alarming is that 50% of the confirmed child abuse fatalities had no prior history with CPS. This could mean the victim trusted the perpetrator enough not to inform CPS during prior abuse or neglect, didn't know they could, or was not reported by those who had been witnesses to abuse. It's important to raise awareness so witnesses of abuse can inform the proper authorities. Now that we're aware of the amount of child abuse in Texas, the result of child abuse fatality investigations, and by whom the abuse was done, we must look at the cause of child abuse or neglect fatality. It is important to raise awareness of these causes so that witnesses can feel more inclined to make reports to CPS, knowing what kind of abuse could be fatal for the child. The chart, provided by DFPS and determined by medical examiners and community-based child fatality review teams, shows physical abuse, as expected, to be the leading cause of confirmed abuse neglect fatalities year after year. A more disturbing cause would be the drowning. By definition of confirmed abuse or neglect, the perpetrator willingly placed the child in a situation that led to drowning. These numbers, being second to physical abuse, makes it look like the perpetrator was trying to cause a fatality but played off as an accident. These kinds of revelations are disturbing and can only be known prior to the fatality if reports are made and investigations are done. Otherwise, the fatality will just be another statistic in next year's report. In some cases, CPS does get involved. Here's a chart from DFPS showing the CPS history, the 2022 cases of confirmed child abuse and neglect fatalities. To recap, there were 997 investigated child fatalities and 182 confirmed abuse neglected. Of those 182, 76 were physically abuse caused. 17 of those 76 were investigated 2 years prior, and the physical abuse was ruled out. This is a problem. CPS needs to be better educated and investigate more thoroughly. For 23% of the later 76 physically abused fatalities to be missed in the prior CPS investigations is unacceptable. Another disturbing fact from the chart is that 4 of those later 76 physical abuse fatalities had a reason to believe abuse was occurring 2 years prior to the death. What good is investigation if there is no intervention? How can CPS have a reason to believe there's abuse and make no action to prevent the child's death 2 years later? We focus on child abuse fatalities in Texas, but I wanted to mention some other facts on near fatalities. According to DFPS, in the fiscal year 2020, Texas had 65 confirmed abuse and neglect-related near fatalities. Notice how the rankings are very similar to the fatality with physical abuse, coming in at number 1 with drowning and neglectful supervision. One important fact to note is that shaken baby syndrome accounted for 49% of all near fatalities in the fiscal year 2022 and is categorized under physical abuse. It is important for Texas to continue with near fatality investigations in order to identify abuse and prevent a future fatality if the abuse or neglect is left uncaught. Oftentimes, with abuse and neglect are often seen to be a result of the caregiver or perpetrator being under the influence of drugs and/or alcohol. With the 2022 statistics provided by DFPS, we can see here that most of the 30 of the cases involved perpetrators who were not actively using drugs or alcohol. Behind no activity use of substance was active use of marijuana, despite its generally use being illegal in Texas. This is surprising to view against alcohol, as alcohol is widely seen as more damaging and more easily accessible in a state like Texas. Yet, marijuana outnumbers the causes by 5 times the active use. It is important for witnesses of substance use with child present to consider making reports to CPS before it is too late. Knowing about abuse and neglect prior to the child fatality is the only way to prevent cases from populating next year's annual report tables. Witnesses of abuse are encouraged to call the Texas Abuse Hotline or report at txabusehotline.org. Thank you very much for allowing me to present today, and together we can work to reduce child abuse fatalities in Texas and around the world.